Can I hide in your car? She was running from her ex, unaware the man in the car was the Mafia boss. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The wind howled through the empty bridge, carrying sheets of cold rain that lashed against the cracked asphalt. Lena stumbled forward, her breath coming out in shallow gasps. Her shoes slapped against puddles, splashing water onto her torn jeans. Behind her, tires screeched. A man's angry voice echoed through the storm. "Lena, you cannot run from me forever." Her heart pounded harder. Ethan was close again. She could hear the rage in his voice, the same tone that used to make her flinch at home. A car horn blared somewhere ahead, headlights cutting through the downpour. Her pulse jumped when she saw a dark SUV parked by the roadside, engine humming softly as if waiting. She darted toward it, hair plastered to her face, rain dripping into her eyes. Without thinking, she yanked the handle of the back door. "Please," she cried out, her voice trembling. "Can I hide in your car? Please, I just need a minute." The man in the driver's seat turned his head slowly. The interior light flickered on for a moment, revealing sharp cheekbones, dark eyes, and an expression unreadable as stone. He said nothing. The silence was deafening, broken only by the hammering rain on the roof. Lena's chest tightened. "Please," she whispered again. "He will find me." For a long moment, the man did not move. Then, without a word, he reached over and unlocked the door. She slid in, slamming it shut behind her. Her hands shook as she wiped the rain from her face. The air inside smelled faintly of leather and smoke. "Thank you," she murmured. The man said nothing. He simply shifted the gear and drove forward into the night. Through the window, Lena watched the road disappear behind them, headlights stretching like silver threads through the storm. Every muscle in her body trembled, a mixture of fear and disbelief. She had no idea who this man was, only that for the first time tonight, she felt safe, if only for a fleeting moment. Her mind raced. She thought of the life she had left behind, the small apartment filled with unfinished sketches, the framed photo of her parents, the sketchbook she always carried. It had fallen somewhere on the bridge when she ran. That sketchbook had been her only dream, the last piece of herself. "Where are we going?" she asked finally, her voice small. The man glanced at her in the mirror. His tone was calm, deep, and unsettling. "Somewhere he will not find you." Lightning flashed, illuminating his face for a heartbeat. His eyes were steady, cold, and strangely gentle at the same time. She could not tell if he was dangerous or kind. Outside, the storm raged harder. Inside the car, silence pressed thick between them. Lena exhaled shakily, leaning her head against the window. She did not see the man's hands tighten on the steering wheel or the faint scar across his wrist. She could not know that the man who had just saved her life was Adrian Moretti, one of the most feared Mafia leaders in the city, a man running from his own kind of danger. And tonight, their fates had collided on a bridge no one else dared to cross. The rain had finally stopped by the time the dark SUV pulled into the long driveway of a secluded estate on the edge of the city. The high iron gates closed behind them with a deep mechanical hum. Lena sat in silence, staring through the window as the mansion appeared through the mist. It looked more like a fortress than a home. Her pulse quickened. The man parked the car and stepped out first. "Come inside," he said quietly. His voice was deep, steady, the kind of voice that did not invite argument. She hesitated, clutching her damp jacket, then followed. Inside, the warmth hit her instantly. The entryway was vast, lit by golden chandeliers that threw reflections across marble floors. A woman in a black uniform appeared from the hallway. "Mr. Moretti," she said softly, "the guest room has been prepared." Lena froze. So that was his name, Adrian Moretti. The name sounded familiar, but her exhausted mind could not place it. "Thank you, Sophia," he replied. "Bring her something warm to eat." Lena tried to speak, to explain, but words tangled in her throat. She had been running all night, soaked, hungry, terrified. Now she stood in a mansion, facing a man whose eyes seemed to read every thought she tried to hide. At dinner, She sat across from him at a long oak table. A bowl of soup steamed in front of her. She wrapped her cold fingers around the spoon, stealing quick glances at him. Adrian ate little, focused on his phone and the news on a muted television screen in the corner. The headline caught her eye. Police continue search for suspect involved in dock explosion. A photograph flashed briefly, a dark car, the same model as his. Her hand trembled slightly. She looked away. "Are you afraid of me?" he asked suddenly. His tone was calm, not accusing. Lena blinked, startled. "No," she lied. "I just do not understand why you help me." Adrian leaned back in his chair. "Because I do not like watching innocent people being hunted." "Innocent?" she whispered. "You do not even know me." His lips curved, but it was not a smile. "I know fear when I see it." The rest of the meal passed in silence. When she finally excused herself, he simply nodded toward the staircase. "You can rest in the east wing. No one will bother you there." Her room was beautiful, far beyond anything she had ever known. Soft cream curtains, a velvet armchair, and a bed so wide she felt small inside it. But when she looked out the window, she saw guards walking along the fence line with flashlights. Her heart sank. She was safe, yes, but also trapped. Lena sat at the desk and stared at a blank sheet of paper. Her sketchbook was gone. The rain had swallowed it back on the bridge. It felt like losing a part of herself. Downstairs, Adrian stood in front of the large window of his study, phone pressed to his ear. His expression was carved from stone. "Do not let Ethan Carter leave the city," he said. "If he looks for her again, I want to know before the police do." He ended the call, his reflection staring back at him in the glass. For a moment, he looked less like a criminal and more like a man who had been running too long. Later that night, Lena crept downstairs for a glass of water. The hallway was dim, lined with paintings and old photographs. Her bare feet made no sound on the carpet. She stopped when she saw a door slightly open at the end of the corridor. From inside came faint music, an old jazz record, crackling with age. She peeked through the gap. Adrian sat alone at a piano, fingers moving slowly over the keys. The melody was soft and haunting, filled with a kind of sadness she could feel even from across the room. He looked up suddenly, eyes catching hers. She gasped and stepped back. "You should be resting," he said quietly. "I could not sleep," she admitted. "Then listen," he murmured, turning back to the piano. "Sometimes the music helps." She stood there for a while, the music washing over her like the rain had hours earlier. For the first time, she noticed the scar along his wrist, thin and pale, like an old secret. That night, as she returned to her room, Lena realized something unsettling. The man who had rescued her was not a stranger who happened to stop on a bridge. He had purpose, he had control, and in his silence lived 1,000 untold stories. What she did not yet know was that one of those stories would soon become her own. Morning light spilled across the marble floors, soft and golden. For the first time in weeks, Lena awoke, without fear, clawing at her chest. She lay still for a moment, listening to the faint hum of the mansion, coming to life, the sound of footsteps in the hall, a door closing, distant murmurs from the kitchen. It was peaceful, almost unreal. Sophia knocked lightly and entered with a tray of breakfast. "Mr. Moretti is in the garden," she said. "He asked if you would join him when you are ready." Lena hesitated. Part of her wanted to stay in the safety of the room. Another part wanted to know who this man truly was. After everything he had done sheltering her, feeding her, she could not understand why. She found him outside near the rose garden. Adrian was kneeling beside a wounded dog, carefully wrapping its paw with gauze. The dog, a tan shepherd mix, whined softly but did not pull away. The sight stopped her in her tracks. The image of this powerful man, tending to an injured animal, did not fit the shadows she had seen in him the night before. "Good morning," she said quietly. He looked up. "Good morning, Lena. You can sit if you want." She knelt beside him, watching the gentle way he tied the bandage. "I did not expect someone like you to have pets." "They are not pets," he said simply. "They are the only creatures that never lie." His tone was calm, but something in it made her chest ache. She noticed the scar on his wrist again as he stroked the dog's fur. "What happened to your hand?" she asked. He paused. "A mistake," he said after a moment. One that cost someone I loved. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unsaid things. Lena looked down at her own hands, remembering the bruises Ethan had left. We all make mistakes, she whispered. Some of us just survive them. He glanced at her, and for a brief second, the coldness in his eyes softened. Over the next few days, a strange rhythm settled between them. Lena began helping Sophia with the household tasks, tending the garden, cooking simple meals. She found comfort in small routines, folding sheets, watering plants, watching the sky change colors over the tall gates. Sometimes she would see Adrian standing by the window of his study, speaking on the phone in a language she did not understand. Other times, he would join her in the garden, saying little, simply existing beside her. One evening, she was sketching the wounded dog on a piece of old stationery when Adrian approached quietly. "You draw well," he said. She smiled faintly. "It is the only thing that ever made sense to me." He looked at the drawing, his voice low. "You should not lose that. People forget the things that keep them human." When he turned to leave, she caught herself asking, "Do you forget?" He stopped but did not answer. That night, Lena dreamed of the bridge again, the sound of rain, the flash of headlights, the stranger who opened his car door. Only now, when she turned to look at him, his face was clearer, familiar. The following morning, as she walked through the hallway, she noticed an open door she had not seen before. Inside was a small library filled with old photographs and framed newspaper articles. One headline froze her in place. Adrian Moretti, acquitted after 5-year trial. Her breath caught. The article showed his younger face beside a story of organized crime, smuggling, and a mysterious death. The sound of footsteps behind her made her spin around. Adrian stood in the doorway, eyes unreadable. "You should not be here," he said quietly. "I know," he interrupted, his voice calm but firm. "Curiosity is dangerous in this house." Lena felt her throat tighten. "Who are you, really?" For a long moment he said nothing. Then, with a sigh that sounded almost tired, he replied, "Someone who once believed power could fix everything. Someone who learned the hard way that it only breaks what you love." He stepped aside, letting her pass. As she walked away, Lena felt the first chill of doubt settle deep in her stomach. The man who had saved her might not be her savior after all. The rain returned that night, steady and relentless, drumming softly against the tall windows of the mansion. Lena sat by the fireplace, sketchbook in her lap, the faint light casting long shadows across the room. The discovery in the library had left her restless. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the newspaper headline, "Adrian Moretti, acquitted after 5-year trial." She had wanted to ask him more, to demand answers, but something inside her hesitated. There was a weight in his silence that told her the truth would hurt. When she heard the distant creak of the piano again, she followed the sound through the dim hallway. Adrian was there, sleeves rolled up, playing a melody that rose and fell like a confession. "You should be asleep," he said without looking up. "So should you," she replied softly, walking closer. "You play like someone who has something to say but does not want to speak." He stopped, letting his hands fall still. "Words can lie. Music does not." Lena sat down on the edge of the piano bench. "Then tell me the truth through your music. Who are you, Adrian?" His eyes lifted to meet hers. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said quietly, "Someone who has done terrible things for people who never deserved loyalty. Someone trying to undo what cannot be undone." Lena's voice trembled. "And what about me? Why help me? You could have left me there." He studied her face, his expression unreadable. "Because once, someone helped me when I did not deserve it. Maybe I am trying to repay that debt." The room was silent except for the crackle of fire. Lena turned her gaze to the flames. She should have felt fear, but she did not. There was something in him, something broken yet human, that drew her closer. Over the next few days, they began to share small moments that felt strangely normal. She joined him for breakfast, and he started asking about her art, her family, her dreams. Sometimes, she caught him smiling, brief, fleeting, but real. One morning, she found him outside repairing the gate that had been damaged in the storm. "You do not seem like the kind of man who fixes things himself," she said teasingly. He wiped his hands on a cloth. "Maybe I am trying to learn." "Oh, She smiled, and for the first time, he smiled back without restraint. It changed his whole face, softer, younger, almost peaceful. That evening, Lena painted in the garden studio he had opened for her. She painted the dog, the roses, the way sunlight hit the marble path. But when Adrian passed by the open door, she found herself sketching him instead, his profile outlined against the twilight. When he saw the drawing later, he paused, surprise flickering in his eyes. "Is that how you see me?" "Yes," she said simply. "A man who hides in the shadows, but still reaches for the light." He looked at the sketch for a long time before whispering, "You should not look at me that way, Lena. I am not the man you think I am." "I do not think," she said softly. "I see." That night, as she walked through the halls, she caught a glimpse of Adrian speaking urgently on the phone. His tone was cold again, sharp and commanding. The warmth she had seen earlier vanished in an instant. "Yes, I know," he said into the receiver. "Handle it before anyone else does." He paused, then added, "And make sure Ethan Carter disappears quietly." Lena froze. The name sliced through the quiet like a blade. Ethan, her ex. Her hand trembled as she covered her mouth. He was planning something. When Adrian turned around, she was gone. Upstairs, in her room, her heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. She looked at her sketchbook, the one filled with drawings of him, and felt a rush of fear and disbelief. Had she fallen for a man who was just as dangerous as the one she had escaped? Downstairs, Adrian stood by the window, unaware she had heard everything. Outside, the rain fell harder, tracing silver lines down the glass. He whispered to himself, "Sometimes, saving someone means destroying what hunts them." Neither of them knew that by morning, both their secrets would begin to unravel. Morning came gray and heavy with fog. The mansion felt different, quieter, as if it were holding its breath. Lena barely slept. Every word she had overheard the night before replayed in her mind. Adrian's voice cold, deliberate, ordering someone to make Ethan disappear. She moved carefully through the halls, her footsteps soft against the marble. The air smelled of rain and something faintly metallic, like gun oil. When she reached the study, the door was half open. Adrian was inside, standing by the window, talking to one of his men. "We cannot afford another mistake," he said. "If Ethan Carter crosses the river, I want eyes on every road. No one moves without my signal." The man nodded and left quickly. Lena stepped into the room. "You are going to kill him, are you not?" Adrian turned slowly. His expression was calm, too calm. "He hurt you. He nearly killed you. Men like that do not stop unless someone makes them stop." "Oh," she shook her head, backing away. "That is not justice. That is revenge." He moved closer, his voice low. "Justice and revenge are sometimes the same thing." Her pulse raced. "If you do this, you are no better than him." For the first time, his mask cracked. "You think I do not know that?" He snapped. Then exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "You do not understand what he has done, Lena. He is not just your ex-boyfriend. He is part of something larger, something that has already cost lives." Lena stared at him, trying to make sense of it. "Then let the police handle it." Adrian gave a bitter laugh. "The police? They take money from the same people who hired Ethan. If I hand him over, they will set him free before sunset." She could see the torment behind his eyes, but fear held her in place. "You cannot fix everything by breaking more things," she whispered. He looked at her for a long time, his jaw tightening. "I will protect you, even if you hate me for it." Lena turned and ran from the room, tears burning in her eyes. She locked herself in her bedroom and pressed her forehead against the door. The man she had started to trust, the man who had rescued her, was slipping into darkness before her eyes. Outside, thunder rolled again, distant but steady. The storm was coming back. That evening, she packed her few belongings, some clothes, her sketchbook, the pencil Adrian had given her. She needed to leave before things went too far. As she moved down the staircase, a flash of movement caught her eye. One of Adrian's guards was speaking urgently into a radio. His words made her blood run cold. "Target confirmed. Ethan Carter spotted near the river road. Orders?" The radio crackled. Adrian's voice came through, quiet but firm. "Do not wait. End it." Oh, quote. Lena's heart pounded. She slipped out through the side door, sprinting into the rain. The gravel path turned muddy under her shoes, but she did not stop. She had to reach Ethan before Adrian's men did. She did not want to save Ethan for his sake. He had already destroyed enough of her life, but she could not stand by and watch another man lose his soul to violence. Back at the mansion, Adrian realized too late that she was gone. The open door, the empty room, the missing sketchbook, it all hit him at once. He slammed his fist against the wall. "Lena, what have you done?" Outside, the storm broke in full force. Lightning cut across the sky, and the chase began. The hunted, the hunter, and the woman caught between them. The rain came down in sheets as Lena raced along the narrow dirt road. Her lungs burned, her heart pounding so loud it drowned out the thunder. Headlights flashed behind her, slicing through the fog. She pushed forward, clutching her small bag against her chest. Somewhere ahead, she could hear another engine, a car speeding toward the same destination. She reached the old bridge that crossed the river. The wooden planks were slick and trembling under her weight. She saw movement on the other side, two dark figures near a black sedan. One of them was Ethan. Even in the dim light, she recognized his arrogant stance, his voice sharp and cruel as ever. "You should have known better than to run, Lena," he shouted, his words barely audible through the storm. "You think that man can save you? He is worse than me." Her voice shook as she yelled back, "Stay away, Ethan! This ends tonight." He laughed, stepping closer. "Oh, it ends all right." He reached into his coat. Before she could react, another car screeched onto the bridge from behind her. The sound of tires and rain collided into chaos. Adrian stepped out, drenched, his coat whipping in the wind. His men fanned out silently behind him, weapons drawn but lowered. "Let her go, Ethan," Adrian said, his voice calm but dangerous. "You have already done enough damage." Ethan sneered. "Says the king of criminals himself. What are you going to do, Moretti? Shoot me? In front of her?" Adrian's jaw clenched. "You are not worth a bullet." Ethan's grin twisted. "Then you will not mind if I finish what I started." He raised his hand, gun glinting in the lightning. Lena screamed. The next few seconds blurred into noise and light. A gunshot cracked through the storm. The bridge shuddered as wood splintered. Ethan stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder. Adrian stood still, his gun smoking in his hand. "It is over," Adrian said. "Walk away while you still can." Ethan's eyes burned with hatred. "You cannot escape what you are, Moretti. The world will never let you." He spat blood onto the wet boards, then stumbled toward the edge of the bridge and vanished into the darkness, swallowed by the rain. The wind howled. Lena stood frozen, tears mixing with the rain on her face. "You shot him," she whispered. Adrian's hand trembled as he lowered the gun. "He would have killed you." "But what about you?" she asked. "Who saves you from what you have become?" For a moment, he had no answer. His expression was raw, vulnerable, the mask finally broken. "Maybe no one," he said quietly. "Maybe that is what I deserve." He turned away, but she stepped forward, placing a trembling hand on his arm. "You do not have to keep living in the dark, Adrian. You can stop running." The sound of sirens began to rise in the distance, faint at first, then closer. Adrian looked toward the flashing lights on the horizon. "Go with them, Lena. Tell them everything. Do not protect me." She shook her head, her tears falling freely. "I am not leaving you here." "I?" He looked at her for a long moment, then smiled faintly, almost sadly. "You already saved me. Just by seeing something good left in me." Police cars emerged through the rain, their lights cutting red and blue through the fog. Adrian raised his hands slowly as the officers shouted commands. Lena watched in silence as they surrounded him. She did not move, not even when they took him away. The bridge that had once been their first meeting now stood between what they were and what they might still become. The rain kept falling, washing away the blood, the fear, and perhaps a part of the past that had chained them both. The morning after the storm was silent, the kind of silence that felt too heavy to breathe in. The bridge had been sealed off by the police, yellow tape fluttering in the cold wind. Lena sat on the back of an ambulance wrapped in a gray blanket, her hands still trembling. The officers asked questions she could barely process. Her answers came out faint and disconnected, like someone else was speaking through her. She kept watching the river. The water was high, violent, carrying pieces of broken wood downstream. There was no sign of Adrian. The officers said he had been taken into custody during the chaos, but no one seemed to know where he had gone afterward. Some said federal agents had intervened. Others said he had escaped. Lena did not believe either story. She just felt empty. The man who had saved her, the man who had terrified her, was now gone without a trace. Days passed. The mansion was locked and guarded, the news calling it the fall of Adrian Moretti, the last quiet ghost of the old city. Lena moved into a small apartment near the art district. It was nothing like the marble halls she had grown used to, but it was hers. She tried to draw again, but every line she made felt hollow. Her sketchbook, once filled with dreams, now carried only unfinished faces. One afternoon, as she walked home from a local gallery, she passed a television in a shop window. The headline froze her in place. Ethan Carter, found dead, in river explosion. The anchor's voice was steady and detached, but the words made her knees weak. The report said the explosion had destroyed an old warehouse tied to the Moretti organization. Adrian's name appeared briefly on the screen, listed as missing, presumed dead. Lena felt something sharp twist inside her chest. She should have felt relief, but instead, she felt grief. That night, she went to the edge of the city, to the hill overlooking the same bridge where everything had begun. The river shimmered under the moonlight, calm now, as if pretending nothing had ever happened. She placed her sketchbook on the railing and opened to the drawing she had made of Adrian, his eyes half in shadow, half in light. "You said no one could save you," she whispered. "Maybe you were wrong." Her voice caught, carried away by the wind. She tore the drawing from the book, folded it carefully, and tucked it into her coat pocket. Behind her, the faint sound of footsteps made her turn. A man stood near the trees, his face hidden beneath a hood. For a second, she thought her mind was playing tricks, but when the wind blew the hood back, her breath caught in her throat. He looked older, thinner, but it was him, Adrian. He said nothing, only offered a faint, tired smile. She stepped toward him, eyes wide with disbelief. "You are alive," he nodded once. "For now. I made a deal, Lena. I gave them everything they needed to shut it all down." Her voice trembled. "Then why are you here?" "Because I needed to see you one last time," he said. "To know that what I did meant something." Tears welled in her eyes. "It did. You saved me, Adrian." He smiled again, the same soft smile she remembered from the garden. "No, Lena, you saved me." Then, before she could speak, he turned and walked into the darkness, swallowed by the wind. Lena stood there, clutching her sketchbook to her chest as the river below carried away the last echoes of the storm. She did not call after him. She knew that some stories did not end with reunion. They ended with understanding, and that was enough. A full year passed. The city healed slowly, and so did Lena. She had opened a small art studio near the waterfront, a quiet space filled with sunlight and the smell of paint. Children from the neighborhood came after school to learn how to draw. She called the studio the Quiet Storm, a name that always made her smile, even when it hurt a little to say aloud. Every morning, she unlocked the front door, watered the plants on the windowsill, and placed a single sketch on the wall, a memory of someone she once knew. None of her students knew who he was, and she never explained. It was enough that he had once existed. The newspapers had long stopped mentioning Adrian Moretti. His name had faded into rumor and silence. Some said he had fled the country. Others said he had died in witness protection. Lena never searched for proof. In her heart, she already knew the truth that he had chosen to disappear so she could live freely. One afternoon, as rain drizzled softly against the windows, Lena sat at her desk reviewing her students' drawings. A soft knock echoed from the door. She looked up, expecting one of the children who had forgotten their umbrella. Instead, a man in a gray suit stepped inside, holding a small envelope. "Miss Lane," he said politely, "I was asked to deliver this to you. The sender requested it be given exactly 1 year from the date on the seal." Her hands trembled as she took it. The envelope was plain, but the handwriting on the front was unmistakable. She recognized every curve of the letters. For Lena. The man nodded and left without another word. Lena sat there for a long moment, staring at the envelope as if it might vanish. Then she opened it. Inside was a folded piece of paper and something small wrapped in cloth. She unfolded the note first. You once told me that people cannot fix everything by breaking more things. You were right. I tried to rebuild instead. The foundation you dreamed of helping those without a voice now bears your name. It will never erase what I was, but maybe it can honor what you believed in. Keep creating beauty. You see the light others forget to look for. That is your gift, Lena. Her eyes blurred with tears. She unwrapped the small cloth bundle and gasped softly. Inside was a silver pendant shaped like a raindrop. Etched into its surface were two letters, L and A. Outside, thunder rolled faintly in the distance, gentle this time, like a memory returning home. She pressed the pendant to her chest and smiled through her tears. That evening, she added a new painting to the studio wall, a man standing in the rain, his back turned to the viewer, walking into light instead of darkness. Beneath it, she wrote one line in soft pencil. Kindness does not end where love begins. It becomes the same thing. When she locked the studio that night, the air smelled of rain, and the city lights shimmered across the wet pavement. Somewhere, far beyond the noise of the streets, she felt certain that Adrian was alive, watching quietly from a distance. He had found his redemption, and she, at last, had found her peace. Spring returned to the city with soft rain and blooming trees along the waterfront. The air was filled with the scent of jasmine and fresh earth. Inside the Quiet Storm studio, children laughed as they painted wide blue skies and fields of yellow. Lena moved between the tables, smiling as she guided their hands, steadying each brushstroke with gentle patience. On the far wall hung her newest work, a large canvas filled with color and motion. It showed two figures standing on a bridge under a storm, facing the same direction. The rain did not look harsh anymore. It looked cleansing, as if washing away everything that hurt. When class ended, she walked to the windowsill where sunlight warmed the silver pendant Adrian had sent her. It glowed softly, its small engraving of L and A catching the light. She touched it, remembering his final words. Keep creating beauty. Outside, the river shimmered, calm and endless. A man on a nearby pier released a small boat carrying a single white flower. She watched it drift toward the bridge in the distance. Somehow, she knew that gesture was not random. Somewhere, someone remembered too. Lena stepped outside and breathed in the cool air. The city no longer felt heavy. It felt alive again, every sound, every color, every raindrop part of something bigger. She looked down at her hands, at the faint stains of paint that would not wash away, and smiled. Her voice, quiet but steady, broke the silence. You were right, Adrian. We cannot change the past, but we can build something better because of it. The wind carried her words over the water, soft and certain. As twilight fell, she locked the studio and walked along the river path. Streetlights reflected off the wet pavement, creating golden ripples of light. She passed by families, couples, children chasing each other through puddles. It was the kind of ordinary happiness she had once thought she would never feel again. She stopped at the bridge, the same place where it had all begun. The city glowed behind her, the river ahead. She took the folded note from her pocket, the one Adrian had written, and placed it gently beneath the railing. Then she whispered, "Thank you." The wind rose for a moment, lifting her hair before settling again, peaceful and still. When she turned to walk home, she carried no fear, only gratitude. Because love had not ended with goodbye. It had become something enduring kindness, memory, and hope. And as the first drops of rain began to fall, Lena smiled toward the sky, ready to begin again.